Kuro just posted official news on the stats and effects on Xiangli's weapon, even though it's been in the game for several weeks, since the start of version 1.2 to be exact. Nevertheless, with this official news, we have final confirmation on the weapon's overall stats and effects, and wow, they look extremely powerful. With a 587 base attack and a respectable 24.3% crit rate, this weapon is very similar to a lot of the previous limited weapons released, such as those from Jin or Jang. The real spice comes from its weapon effect, that, when looking at Resonance Liberation damage, boosts that stat by up to 60% at the first rank. That's a lot of damage. And it's on a pair of, gauntlets. Any player who's played Xiangli's trial or previewed these numbers likely has a ton of questions. Is this weapon strong? Is it usable on multiple characters? And with Xiangli Yao arriving for completely free along with this weapon's banner, is it actually worth pulling? Some of these questions have definitive answers, while others are completely dependent on your account and who you actually enjoy playing. The value of a limited weapon, especially in a game like Wuthering Waves, is tied to your roster of characters. With the ability to share weapons across teams and characters in the most important endgame content, one of the most efficient strategies a player can take is to pull for weapons that can be equipped across multiple characters on your account. When we think about characters that can share weapons, it's usually DPS characters who heavily benefit from the increased base attack and critical stats associated with 5 stars. Xiangli's weapon is a prime example of this. Today we'll be answering those questions you might be having on this weapon, breaking down the overall effectiveness of Xiangli's signature, who some of its best users will be, and whether or not it's actually worth pulling based on the state of your account. It's a powerful weapon, rest assured, but its overall value is highly dependent on how much you like Xiangli Yao, and how much you're willing to give up in future versions like 1.3. As always, if you're enjoying this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. Xiangli's signature follows a similar stat profile seen across other main DPS's weapons, with the highest base attack we've seen in the game followed by a respectable amount of crit rate. While other weapons like Zhejia's or Yinlin's have higher critical stats, they sacrifice a significant portion of their weapon's base attack for this advantage. What this means is that characters using weapons like Xiangli's or Jin Ci's will have a much higher attack stat than characters using more critically balanced weapons. Base attack in Wuthering Waves is an incredibly important stat because every single percentage stat boost in the game, be it from your echoes or your team buffs, scales off this base attack. As far as we've seen, there aren't any buffs in Wuthering Waves that add flat attack to your characters, like Bennett from Genshin Impact. So base attack from weapons is, at the end of the day, a fantastic stat to have for any damage dealer. With the weapon's crit rate main stat, the go-to pairing on the echo side will be a crit damage forecast. If you're using this weapon on Xiangli Yao, there are some things you should keep in mind across his gearing. Xiangli, unlike every other limited 5-star, has no critical rate upgrades across his skill tree. They're all critical damage nodes. What this means is that with a critical damage forecast and a minimum crit rate roll on all of your echoes, you'll only have 60.8% crit rate. Again, that's about 61% crit rate with a substat on every echo. What this means is that if you want consistent crits on Xiangli, you'll need both a crit rate substat on every piece and rolls that are significantly higher than the minimum of 6.3. Keep farming those tacit fields. However, base stats, regardless of how effective they can be, are still only one part of a weapon's impact. Oftentimes, the weapon's skill can be a driving force for its overall effectiveness, and Xiangli has one of the most unique weapon skills we've seen. The weapon gives a fantastic 12% attribute damage bonus and a whopping 48% resonance liberation damage upon casting one. This effect gets extended by up to 15 seconds, with a 5-second extension after every resonance skill cast. This weapon tells us a few things. First, this weapon is great for any character that consistently deals resonance liberation damage. Second, Xiangli is really the only character in the game that actually benefits from the extended duration of its effect. Every other Gauntlet user simply deals resonance liberation damage a single time in their rotation. They don't repeatedly deal it across their kit like Xiangli does. This unfortunately makes a huge part of Xiangli's signature a little obsolete on the other characters. Characters like Yan Wu, Ling Yang, and Zhan Xin with sequence nodes can easily increase the buff's duration with a very low cooldown or charges on their resonance skill. But what's the actual point when they cannot deal any more resonance liberation damage after casting one? The weapon's use cases are only made worse by the fact that, well, half the Gauntlet users are far more effective taking on the role of a support with the Rejuvenating Glow Sonata set and the Originite Gauntlets to buff their teams. However, if you just want to build some of these characters as a DPS, Verity's Handle will be a great way to go about it. What this ultimately means is that Xiangli's signature, when used on any character that isn't Xiangli, gives an attribute damage buff and buffs one of their attacks by 48%. When these characters' resonance liberations are a very, very small part of their overall damage profile, there just simply isn't a lot of value for these characters outside of the weapon's crit stats and the 12% attribute damage buff. When these base stats are already present on a lot of limited 5-stars in combination with their powerful weapon effects, this isn't really a groundbreaking selling point. However, there's always the opportunity for this weapon to be used on future releases, and it could turn out that it works fantastically with some of the planned characters. When comparing Verity's Handle with other weapons, there really aren't any other limited 5-stars or standard 5-stars in direct competition. Abyss Surges is not good, with an attack percentage main stat and very minor bonuses to basic attack and resonance skill damage. Verity's Handle outperforms this weapon based off its crit stat and attribute damage effect on its own. On the other hand, the Battle Pass weapon, Stonard, comes equipped with a crit rate main stat and a powerful weapon effect for Xiangli Yao, but unfortunately suffers from the lowered base stats present on 4-star weapons. Considering how hard it will be to balance Xiangli's crit ratio with Verity's Handle's higher crit rate, it'll be even harder with Stonard's lower one. So if you're using a Battle Pass weapon, it's highly recommended that you sacrifice your crit damage forecast and replace it with a crit rate one instead. Based off where this discussion has been going, you might have a good idea on the potential value of Xiangli's signature. It's pretty simple. On one hand, if you want an easier time playing and gearing Xiangli Yao and you want to invest in his character, pull the weapon. On the other hand, if you've already bought the Battle Pass and don't mind sacrificing some of his damage output, it might be worth sticking to Stonard. On the third hand, if you simply want a crit rate main stat 5-star weapon to make gearing your current and future roster easier, Xiangli's weapon is the only one available for the foreseeable future. However, making this investment now means you might not have the funds, or will be digging into your personal funds for the very exciting characters we have on the horizon. You decide what you do with your resources. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please hit that like and subscribe button. Peace out.